expectations for the Black community. And so I know we had a lot of conversation. I'd love to welcome others on the call if I missed anything important, but I don't want to also usurp your time. But those were the highlights from our conversation from my perspective.
Thanks, and please feel free to use the chat function. We've had some great contributions to the conversation over here during the meeting today. Kathy Hinko sent us some resources. Cassie Heron sent us some resources. So please use the chat room to say what you want to say, questions you want to ask, and also to send along links and resources. Eric and Sarah, and then Rebecca Fly, why don't you be on deck after that?
I'm actually going to kick it to CheRhonda Greenlee, who was in our group and had
perfect.
Hey everyone, thanks Eric. So we had a very lively group, and I'll go through our quick wins since we have a small amount of time. One, we decided that possibly we could create a combined list to identify the small businesses and what services are available. There's a lot of discrepancies, or sometimes corporations or other businesses just don't know who to find so they can spend their dollars. So one quick win would gather all the Hispanic Commerce, all these different folks to get their list together, so that way we can find out who these businesses are and what services they provide, whether they're already certified as a minority or female or Hispanic business owner or not, but define those businesses. Two, Simon from Thornton brought up a great point with corporate collaborations. Yes, we can try to go find corporations, but the ones that are at the table, find out what they can do. What can you give towards the cause? Can you provide mentorship? Can you intentionally direct corporate buying dollars inside minority businesses? So if you're spending money on supplies, can you first find a minority supplier in Louisville and then go elsewhere? But that goes back to the list of making sure we know who has what and what their services are. And then three, consider the digital divide. No matter what we do in these quick wins, when we put things on the website, make sure that we know not everybody can go to the local website. They may not know about it. So keep in mind the different community organizations that can get the word out. So we have to consider the digital divide. Did I get everything here? Okay.
Yeah, the digital divide has certainly been on a lot of lists recently, and the digital divide is like so many things. It's just money. We can do it. We have the technology. We just have to pay for it. All right, Rebecca Fly, you're up next, followed by Lyndon and Christina.
Great. Our group came up with a few things that we focused on: access to capital, access to food. Those were the two big things. Scott Collins in our group, who heads up Canopy, they just finished a campaign for Black-owned businesses and wants to make it a $1 million campaign. I think he'll be making asks of folks to support this that will go to Black-owned businesses. We did peg, I would say, short to midterm on our list of projects that we can add for this effort. And then Chantrice Martin with Feed the West talked about trying to raising money in order to, she's going to work on a grocery store, which really warmed my heart, and also trying to raise money to get more money, or get more food, sorry, in the West. And then we did talk about a West End business incubator, which I know that we've talked about some internally, but this is something that would help all of the West End Black-owned businesses. Touches on everything we've all been talking about: small business development, how we let everybody know who these Black-owned small businesses are, and get financing capital to them. It's my 90 seconds.
Very good. All right, Lyndon and Christina are next, and then Nikki Lanier will bring us home to our last section.
Okay, and I'll provide some points, and anyone else can jump in as well. I would say our conversations may be a little bit different because we had folks who were just asking some specific questions about the path forward and how it's been received, since obviously we had just presented on that. There were questions in terms of where the mayor and Metro Council are with regard to that, where we stand in terms of the initiative within that around the creation of a $50 million community fund. So we had some conversation about that. We also talked quite a bit about education. And recognizing that there is a separate education committee, but there were conversations about the connection between education and economic development, We started it off with a conversation around folks in the accounting and the finance industry looking to diversify their workforce, but needing to be very innovative about how they do that if a pipeline isn't existing. So what does it look like going into the high schools? So there just the confluence of those two sectors of work was something that was touched on quite a bit in our group. And I think I'll see if Lyndon has anything else to add.
No, I do think you covered. I did want to, at least with regard to the path, somebody earlier in one of the earlier summaries mentioned about the importance of Black-led, and that is true for the path, but also I'd like to highlight the idea of it being Black-focused, right? Like, because it's not always just enough for it to be Black-led if the organization doesn't have a focus on serving Black people, Black business owners, Black entrepreneurs, and so that is equally important as well.
All right, Nikki, are you ready to fill out the last team
Ready.
here?
I'm ready. Hopefully you can hear me all right. So we have 3 points I'd like to share. The first idea we had, and we focused almost exclusively on corporate collaboration, was the construction of a corporate consortium of some sort that would do 2 things. One, serve as bring together a collective funding mechanism or collectively fund Black-led and Black-serving organizations in Louisville, so that we would envision these companies coming together and committing several $100 million toward the development of Black businesses and the resurrection of the West End, but doing so, funneling that money through Black-led and Black-serving organizations rather than doling them out directly to the end user. The second goal of this consortium would be to make a commitment to spend with Black businesses. Again, from this $400 million, I'm thinking in my head, $500 million pot. But a commitment to spend with Black businesses as a consortium. So it's not just that you've got a Black business on your roster as one that you do business with, but the actual spend happening each year committed to by this consortium. That's one idea. The second one was this whole idea of certification, minority-owned business certification, is archaic. Many of us believe, and are not quite sure what the point of that is, other than to serve as an impediment, quite frankly. You're asking organizations to attest to what they already are, for what purpose. So I think that we as a community can come together, and particularly with GLI, rallying GLI resources, really fashion a better response around what are we expecting these businesses to do. And especially if one of our great members, I think Seema, said, we got to get out of this mindset that we're looking at this work as charitable. But by requesting and requiring these certifications, is reinforcing this idea that there's a separate subset of businesses through which I will procure work, but only if I have to, right? So I think if we revisit this whole idea of why do you have to have certifications to begin with for these businesses and not others, we need to challenge it. The third is with our corporate financial institution friends, and I think Christina talked about this earlier, the models and assessments that we have in place to determine how do we vet credit worthiness, how do we vet the corporate structures, how do we assess who's ready to really be funded for a business. All of that is inherently flawed as it relates to Black people and the structures that are in Black communities. They just don't work. So we need entirely new models in addition to new funding streams, funding sources through which that capital can be funneled. But we really do need an entirely different model to assess, because our current tools don't contemplate the level of racism and the level of disinvestment that have beleaguered a lot of these communities and people of color forever. So I think there's ways to leverage the good work of what folks are already doing with organizations like the Urban League, and One West certainly is positioned to help with the small business development foundationing. So I just think that really leaning into organizations like that, and so like those and so many others, really will help us to get out of this mindset that we're working from a charitable lens and not an economic lens as we restore what's been broken in Louisville.
Thank you, Nikki. And those are some great, very specific things that we can follow up on quickly. I know we're coming up at the end of our appointed time together. I'm going to do a few wrap-up things, and if we go a little bit over, those of you who can stay on, please do. I know some folks have to jump and do other things. I'm going to try to address any of the questions that I saw in the chat that may not have been addressed. There was one question earlier about clarifying that this group wouldn't just be about small business, but about all the economic issues. Absolutely about all of the economic issues. There's been a general feeling that probably one of our smaller work groups, which would be 15 to 20 people, would focus on small business because there's such opportunity there. But this is going to cover the full breadth of the economic issues that we need to contend with. And we heard a lot of those in the reports there from the breakouts. So Lena, I'm going to ask you to help me if I missed any other big questions over here. I know what we will do coming out of this today is we'll summarize what we heard and work with co-chairs to make sure we get a full working document of that. And then put forward some working group proposals. Say, here are the working groups that we think we need. And then folks can sign up for those, can sign up for a lot of them or one of them or none of them and say, I just want to stay connected generally to the work. But hopefully something you've heard today inspires you to want to be involved in a deeper level. With COVID-19, that's probably going to mean meeting like this, but that's why we have this format for you. I had a virtual coffee with someone the other day. I had a mug, he had a mug, and we had a conversation like this, and we got a lot done. So we can make the best of it. And again, keep an eye on the chat room here. A lot of great conversation going on. We will save this conversation too to make sure we capture everything there. Before we part ways, I want to make sure that I recognize all of the elected officials who we had on the call today. We had quite a few from the Metro Council as well as from our state legislative delegation. I saw Councilman Piagentini, who's been very active with this from the beginning, as well as Councilman Marcus Winkler and Councilman David Yates, all of them being involved in economic issues with the council. Representative Nima Kulkarni, Representative Maria Sorolas, and Senator Gerald Neal were all with us today, and I know active participants in the conversation. So really important to have you all involved because some of the things we might recommend may need a law change or two. So glad you're here with us. So in closing today, I want to thank everybody for their time. Thank Lena for getting us all organized. Thank you for responding to Lena's emails. That's how work gets done around here. So please, let's keep doing that. At our next full group meeting, we will have a presentation from Sarah DeVasher Wisdom and her team at GLI. They recently completed a significant body of work right before COVID hit with a group called Techonomy. So if you've heard the reference to the Techonomy report, several people on this call today have already been involved in the alignment teams and breakouts on that. And so I think it's going to be important for us to listen to a briefing on that as it goes deeper into some of these areas that we just kind of touched on today. They're in the macro part of the economy. But it's been really great to be with you. I'm just scanning the side over here, and some of these things we'll follow up on individually as well. So we've got a lot of work to do, but we've got the right team to do it. Thank everybody for their time. We really appreciate that. That is the most precious commodity that we cannot make more of. And most importantly, thank you for committing to Louisville. You know, I said before all of 2020 happened, I'd never been to another city where people use the L word like they do in Louisville. People love being from Louisville and love living in Louisville. And right now in Louisville, we're dealing with some things that don't feel very lovely. They're dealing with some things that we need to deal with and we are long overdue to deal with. And so gathering together in places like this and loving one another in the city we're in is how we're going to come back and figure out how we make this better. It has to be better. It has to be better for everyone. And I really appreciate the fact that we're together in this journey on it. So have a great evening. Wear your masks. Don't breathe on anybody. Stay healthy. We'll see you back here in this format before too long. Keep an eye on that email. Have a good evening, everybody.
Great job. Thank you.